Well, hello everybody. It's your favorite day of the week. It's time for another episode of The Reality Reading Rainbow, where I talk about books written by reality stars, especially those from Bravo, and try to make sense of them. I am your host, Les Barrett. Hello everybody. Today we are talking about a new book. We are talking about Caviar Dreams on a Tuna Fish Budget, written by Margaret Josephs from The Real Housewives of New Jersey. I didn't know about you, and I didn't know why, but for some reason, when I hear that title, Caviar Dreams on a Tuna Fish Budget, it reminds me of that song, Baby Got Back, LA face with Oakland booty. I don't know why it reminds me of that, but it does. Anyway, so yes, we're talking about the book by Margaret Josephs, Caviar Dreams on a Tuna Fish Budget. And we are starting off with chapter 1. And did I introduce myself? Oh, yes, I sure did. Les Barrett here. So let's do this. Chapter 1. So, this is a story about Margaret Josephs from, classic Marge from The Real Housewives of New Jersey, one of my favorites on The Real Housewives of New Jersey. So I was definitely excited to read this book. And I'm finding this book actually very interesting. It's actually a good read. Well, I'm not reading it. I'm listening to it on Audible. And Margaret is actually reading the book. So it's pretty cool. And she's coming across really well, actually. It's very personable. It's very funny. She's not like Erica Jane. When I listened to Erica Jane's book on Audible, basically she sounded like she thought that she was doing us a favor by reading her boring ass book. This is way different. Margaret is actually doing she does a very good job. So chapter 1 is called Raised by Wolves. All right. And so this is where Margaret, classic Marge, tells us about her childhood. So she says that from day one, she was basically a mini adult. And talks about how she never had a childhood. Now, the reason why she says that she didn't have much childhood was because she felt that she was put on this earth to protect her mother, Marge Sr. Now, Marge Sr. had Margaret back when she was 20 years old. So Marge Sr. was a young mother. And so she says that basically Marge Sr. was more of like a friend to her. She said that actually she basically was Marge Sr.'s best accessory. She said what Marge Sr. would do. It basically said Marge Sr. would dress her like a mini adult. So basically they'd be twinning on a regular basis. So Marge Sr. would have her fabulous outfit, and classic Marge would be in the same outfit, but just in toddler's outfit. Which actually sounds kind of fun and kind of cute, if you ask me. But, Marge does not think so. So she said that, basically, since Marge Sr. was so young, it was like a young person raising a young person. So she says what Marge Sr. would do a lot of times would leave her with her grandparents, because Marge Sr., since she was a 20-year-old mother, she was still interested in going out and having fun, dating guys. So then Margaret goes on to tell how her dad, her birth father, was 11 years older than her mother. So in the scheme of things, he wasn't that old either. He was like 31. He wasn't in the picture very long. But the thing that surprised me is I always just considered The Real Housewives of New Jersey. I always assumed that Margaret was Italian. No, Margaret is not Italian. Margaret is Hungarian. And both Marge Sr. and her birth father were Hungarian, and as a matter of fact, Margaret was first generation. So, so I thought that was very cool, very interesting. So she said that the only reason why her parents got married was because Marge Sr. got pregnant with Margaret, and it was never a good match. So another thing that Margaret says is that, in the Hungarian culture, it is not unusual to name your daughter after you. So the fact that Marge Sr. named Margaret, it was no big deal. It's not unusual. So turns out her biological father was very verbally and physically abusive with Marge Sr. Margaret said she did not find this out until she was an adult. But it explains why Marge, of course, Marge Sr. left this guy, and it was a good thing that she left, because Margaret goes on to tell a story about how, like, one Easter, Marge Sr. didn't show up at her parents' house because her father had beaten her so badly that she was in the hospital. So it was a good thing that Marge Sr. left this guy. But Marge Sr. did not let him grasp under her feet. She left this abusive guy, and Margaret says that she was dating 2 weeks later. And so another thing that was quite interesting and kind of disturbing was that Margaret's biological father, after Marge Sr. left him, tried to shoot Marge Sr. He didn't succeed, obviously, but he tried. So they lost touch with him, and Margaret has no idea whether he's dead or alive. No idea. She thinks probably dead. So Margaret basically was raised by her grandparents. She spent a lot of her time at her grandmother's house. She said she didn't go to nursery school. She basically stayed at her grandmother's house and watched soap operas while Marge Sr. worked. And so, Margaret says she didn't speak English until she was in kindergarten. So Margaret said that she spent all day as a child watching General Hospital and All My Children with her grandma. And so going to school was basically like a shock for her, because she couldn't hang out and watch soap operas anymore all day. That's what she was used to doing. So Marge Sr. was notorious for dating married men. So Marge Sr. had this steady boyfriend named Wayne, but even though Marge Sr. was dating Wayne, Marge Sr. always had a man on the side as well. And poor Wayne sounds like this long-suffering guy, because it sounds like Marge Sr. really put him through his paces. Margaret tells a story about one time Marge Sr. had a date with this married guy, but then Wayne came over, and so she hid the married guy in her closet. And Margaret says that, as a child, she lived in very diverse neighborhoods, that she had kids of all different ethnicities and races, which was great. And she talked about how when she was a kid, her very good friends were these Jewish children. So because of that, she learned about the Holocaust. And so it ended up being very educational for her. So another thing that Margaret said that she had to do when she was a little kid is that she would have to go to her grandmother's house and shoot her grandmother up with insulin. And she said that whenever her grandmother would piss her off, she would give her the shot a little harder than she normally would, as a way to kind of start pissing her off, which I thought was funny. So Margaret says that she basically was the adult in the relationship. So she said that she basically made raised Marge Senior. And so she said because of this, she never felt safe or she never felt protected as a child because she was busy raising a mom. And so she looks back now and says that she was too sexy for a little girl. Like Marge Senior dressed her too sexy. She knew too much. Marge Senior had a drinking problem. She'd get really drunk, and to get really drunk to the point that when Margaret had a child of her own, Margaret told Marge Senior that if you drink around my child, you will no longer be able to see my child. And so Marge Senior stopped drinking for that very reason. And so Margaret says that because of Marge Senior's drinking problem, that's why she doesn't drink today, because she doesn't want to lose control, because she was so used to being a parent. She was so used to taking care of her mother. She was the one that was so used to having to basically take care of everything that she doesn't like to lose control, and so that's why she doesn't get drunk. She says she'll drink every now and then, but she doesn't make it happen, which I always find interesting. I know other, to be honest, and I've been honest about this, I'm personally in recovery, but I always find it interesting people who have never drank, who have never drank alcohol or have no desire to drink alcohol. And the fact that, because the whole reason why I stopped drinking is because I would lose control. And I lost that luxury of being able to drink because of my control issue. So it's interesting just hearing, anyway, of course, I'm at home. There's no noise all day. The minute I decide to start recording a podcast, and there's noise everywhere. Anyway, as I was saying, I always find it interesting when people make the decision not to drink because they're afraid of losing control, and they stick to it on their own. So I find that a very interesting thing about Marge. Margaret told Marge Senior that if you don't stop drinking, you're not allowed to give out my son. And so Marge Senior stopped drinking, and Margaret says that Marge Senior is a way better grandmother than she was a mother. And she's very attentive to her son, and she was very kind and very loving. Well, it wasn't that Marge Senior was unkind towards Margaret, because she was not. It was just Marge Senior didn't sound like she was all that responsive. And then so she tells the story about one day. So Margaret had her best friend was this little Indian girl that lived in their apartment complex. So the girl's parents, the girl's dad was a doctor. And then she said one night Marge Senior was having a party, but the neighbors were having a party as well, and so the neighbors' party was way more well attended than Marge Senior's party. So Marge Senior took all of her house guests to the party and went to crash the neighbor's party. And I guess she put on a scene. And so Margaret said that the next day that she was embarrassed because her little friend's parents were talking about how wild the night was. And then she tells this other story about the time that the family friends were having this big birthday party, and Marge Senior got really drunk and he was willing to serve Margaret. So, it's things like that kind of shapes who she is today. Oh, then she also told the story about how Marge Senior signed her up for swimming lessons, but the swim teacher was really cute. So Margaret says that so while Marge Senior was busy flirting with the swim instructor, Margaret was basically practically drowning in the pool because the swim instructor was paying way more attention to Mark Senior than he was to Margaret. He was learning about this so well. But so Margaret says that she put her foot down and changed to a female swim instructor. She says now she swims better than ever today. And so then at the end of chapter 1, so every chapter, at the end of every chapter, Margaret has these little anecdotes or sayings. So at the end of chapter 1, Margaret says, you can't choose your starting line, but you choose how it impacts your decisions somewhere down the line. And that is chapter 1. So I'm just starting it out. I just actually, truth be told, I'm almost finished with the book, but I wanted to kind of, milk the podcast out for a few episodes. So I just thought I'd start out like briefly with chapter 1, but starting next week, I'm going to cover more than one chapter. But yeah, the book is pretty good. I'm actually enjoying it. And, Margaret's life gets pretty rough at some point. It gets pretty deep. And yeah, it's an interesting book. She talks about like her marriages and all that stuff. And she's very open. Very open, very honest. You get to know her. One of the reasons what I like to do with these books is I like to read the book, and then I like to see if that is how the housewife portrays herself on the show. And yeah, Margaret is pretty close to the way that Margaret acts on The Real Housewives of New Jersey is it's pretty close to how she describes herself in the book. So we'll be talking more. So that's it for this week. But there is going to be an after show. So if you are one of our Patreoners, our special readers, I'm going to continue on with the after show. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon member, you can go to The Reality Reading Rainbow on Patreon, and we have various levels ranging from $1 off. And the after show is like a little extra tidbit, but I get it. Not everyone's working right now. People are in all sorts of different places financially. So hey, if you can throw a couple of bucks, that's wonderful. But if you can't, that's fine too. Listen to the regular show. Your presence is my presence. But the after show is something extra and a lot of fun. This after show I'm going to talk about it's Monday, March 28th. The day after the bitch slap witnessed around the world. Yes, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock out there. So that's what I am going to chat about in the after show. So if you want to join me for the after show, go to Patreon, throw a couple of bucks. If not, I will see you next week. If you want to get a hold of me, you can find me on Facebook at The Reality Reading Rainbow, or you can find me on I have a Gmail account of The Reality Reading Rainbow at gmail.com. Please, I'm always open to suggestions. I am always open to listener suggestions. As a matter of fact, this book that I'm reading right now is a listener suggestion. So I'm open to it. So drop me a line there. Or you can follow on Instagram at The Reality Reading Rainbow. And I think that's it. So until next time, keep reading. Bye.